What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
This is
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod. RedPubPod. RedPubPod. A podcast
RedPubPod.
from Redhawk Publications.
RedPubPod. I screwed it up.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to RedPubPod. You know your good friends here at Redhawk Publications, located at Catawba Valley Community College in charming Hickory, North Carolina. We always bring you the best and brightest, and we have a new book out today, and we are very, very fortunate to have a new guest in the house. Before I introduce our guest of the hour with his new collection of poetry, I would like to mention we have a special guest co-host. As some of you may be aware, Robert Fike, our publisher, he's under the weather and he will be back. But in the interim, I'm enjoying sharing the space with other people. And I can say that because he's not here. Anyway, we want to thank very much for Cecilia Woloch. She is a well-known poet internationally, currently on a Fulbright in Europe, and we are blessed to have her from Switzerland. Cecilia, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Patty. My Fulbright isn't in Switzerland, though, just so you know.
Would you share? Where is the Fulbright? So we all know.
My Fulbright is in Poland. I've had a couple of Fulbrights in Poland, and I'm actually going back to be a Fulbright scholar at Jagiellonian University in Krakow. You get extra credit if you can pronounce Jagiellonian. It took me a couple years, but I'll be there starting in early 2026. They have a creative writing and literary translation and American literature program, so it's going to be great. Come and see me.
Oh, you know what? I don't say that to Patty because she will. But that said, I am very excited to hear that, and I know that you are hanging out in Europe for the summer. So thank you so much for being there. If we have any little audio issues, just know it's because the internets are having struggles over the Atlantic Ocean. Let's just blame it on the Atlantic. But that said, if it weren't for Cecilia, we probably would not have our guest of the hour. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Fortunately, we were blessed with a collection that came through by Rupert Fike. He's a poet from Georgia, again, with an extremely impressive background. And not only a poet, but a carpenter, and more importantly, a husband to Kathy and grandfather and father of two. I think the most exciting part is this particular poetry collection, and it's called All Things in Common, which you can get on our website. Tells a very, very interesting story of a pivotal event in American history. Rupert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Patty. It's great to be here, and I'm really happy that Redhawk saw fit to like this, to like these poems.
Well, I will say it was very serendipitously. It came to us through Cecilia, who came to us through Bart. And for those who may not be familiar with Bart Solarczyk, and we have published several of his books. He's passed, but he's always with us because we always have his words. Cecilia, would you tell us a little bit about Bart and how you actually ended up bringing us Rupert?
Well, Bart was my first cousin on the Wisniewski side of my family. So, and we were always close. The cousins on that side of the family, there were about 32 first cousins, and we were all like brothers and sisters. So Bart and I were always close, particularly when we were teenagers and young adults. And we both started writing poems independently of one another. And then it was his mother who said, Bart's writing poetry. And so we both came from, kind of working class immigrant backgrounds. And we, as young poets, we really encouraged and supported one another and read our journals to one another. And Bart had a little press, Burnt Orphan Press. And actually, his first chapbook, I typed it for him. So, and we had lost touch for a while until the pandemic. And the pandemic grounded me in Los Angeles. I usually travel at least half of the year. So Bart and I, tragically, his wife died of COVID early in the pandemic. And, that Bart and I just got back in touch and tried to, be a presence in one another's lives and get caught up on one another's accomplishments as poets. So it was Bart who introduced me to Redhawk Publishing. He said, "Oh, this press in North Carolina, they're really wonderful. Patty Thompson, they've treated my work so beautifully." And when Bart died, was it a year and a half ago, Patty?
It was, I want to say it was either August or September of I don't think it was
honestly, there have
more than a
been,
year ago.
yeah, but I wanted to do a tribute to him on the Zoom. I run a poetry series on Zoom once a month called Cecilia Wallach and Friends. And early in this series, we had a reading that was themed the nepotism reading because I had Bart, my cousin, and my youngest sister, Bobby, who's a terrific and nonfiction writer. So, and then, after Bart passed, we wanted to do a tribute to him because it turned out that some of my poet friends in Los Angeles were like big fans of Bart Solarczyk. They came to the reading and they said, "You're Bart's cousin?" It's like, it sort of brought us together. And then when I was in North Carolina last fall doing a little tour, I stopped to meet Patty in person and to meet Robert and to get a load of what Redhawk was doing. And I don't know, that same trip, I gave a reading in Atlanta. Rupert was there. I think, Rupert, I asked you what you were up to. Yes. And I have loved Rupert Fike's work for, 20 years. I met Rupert Fike 20 years ago when I moved to Atlanta, lived in Atlanta kind of briefly. And I was always knocked out by his poems. He's one of the most original poets writing in America today. Nobody writes like Rupert Fike. It's a very distinct voice. He's very well loved in Atlanta. And Rupert had published a couple of books, and somehow he shared with me, I think I asked you, Rupert, if I could see these poems about the farm. And I was knocked out by them. I was knocked out. And he said he was trying to get it together as a chapbook manuscript. And I said, no, this is a book. This is a book. So I think I kind of immediately got back in touch with Patty. And then it all happened pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, I think we found Bart through Carter Monroe, Charlie Whitley. Charlie introduces us to Bart. From Bart, we learn Cecilia. And from Cecilia, we get Rupert. And you talk about the tentacles of, Nepo. The fact is, if you're not kind, you better be good. And I presume you're both, Rupert. But the fact is, when I found out about you, I went online and there was a poem that I read of yours that just was like, oh, okay, he's real. I think it's in your previous book, and it's called Tutoring Muhammad.
Yeah, it's a wonderful poem. Yeah,
good Lord, that sealed the deal. It's like if he publishes the phone book, I'll be helping him out, because that poem just made me realize, okay, he's real, he's good. And then, of course, the interesting thing about this new collection that, again, Redhawk has published just recently, All Things in Common. By the way, it just came in today, Rupert.
Oh, excellent.
I know. Once I get a little bit of help next week, we're going to be shipping them out to about the 80 or 90 people that have pre-ordered it. It's crazy. It's lovely. But it gave me an opportunity to once again read and learn, because the history of this farm, which I had never heard of until this collection came in, I was totally entranced. The nerd in me was like nerding out on Wikipedia, looking up the farm. There's YouTube clips, there's articles, there's books, there's so much information on this mythical farm that you were instrumental in starting. So I want to share with people one thing about this poetry collection. In and of itself, as poems, they're solid. They're rock hard solid. You're going to enjoy them. Add to it, once you learn a little bit about the farm, it's deep. And so that's one of the things I really want to have a conversation about with you. I think I have to start with this farm. I'm fascinated. I was probably 10 years old in 71. So the commune thing was something I heard about from my older cousins, but not a part of our lives collectively, my family. You and your wife, Kathy, were one of the original couples that went out there.
Right. It was, you want me to, it was just like everybody from all parts of the country were just drawn to San Francisco. It's because we were all taking acid and we're all reading Eastern philosophy. There was just one way to heal ourselves, and that was to get to San Francisco. It was just innately, we all did that. So we left from Atlanta. We were living in a big house with SCLC workers, and it was right after Dr. King's assassination. And we could tell this house was going to be busted, and it was busted almost 2 or 3 weeks after we left. So we didn't want to go to jail in Atlanta.
So you left Atlanta to go to the Bay.
Yes, where we found out that there was a strict dichotomy between the political and the spiritual. You had to choose, basically. In Atlanta, you were both. Everybody, the spiritual, political, civil rights, anti-war, we're all together. But in the Bay Area, it was much more. There was so many little different gurus and teachers, and I go into it in the first part, the first poem, setting the scene.
Well, that's the thing I love about the collection is I had heard about the farm because Rupert is such an interesting guy, such a fascinating guy, and he's a really humble guy and really charming and funny when you meet him. So I had heard about the farm, and I always wanted to hear more about it because I was a little bit late for the counterculture, not too late, but in this book of poems, he really tells the story from the beginning. There's a really solid narrative here. You don't have to have any background information to follow the narrative here, but it really starts with that whole community of people who were drawn to San Francisco and wanted to create a different kind of world, and fixing up old school buses and going cross country to Tennessee and founding the farm. And it's, as you said, Patty, it's deep, it's profound, but being the work of Rupert Fike, it is also hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And like I said, when I started to read things, I watched some YouTube clips. I looked at things on Wikipedia. By the way, in the description of this pod, I'll be giving you guys all the information on the farm because you're going to enjoy it. But that said, I'm reading things, and then I'm reading his poems. It's a whole new level. Maggie May happens to be one of the ones that makes me laugh. You can tell that there's a little bit of discontent coming in towards the end of the poetry, and you begin to realize, okay, the windows have been opened, the shades are now up, and you see the lofty ambitions. There's a poem, Notes from a Children's Crusade, where, they're sending people to Bangladesh and the South Bronx. But meanwhile, you guys are still getting stones in your food. It's like, I picture how you must have felt. Like, it's like we're doing all these things, but at the same time, maybe I should get my books and go on back to school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wake up, Maggie. Can we hear Rupert read, maybe the poem at the beginning?
Yeah, let me start with this, because I already talked about it, but that's the thing about poetry is compression. So, I like the way the whole book starts with this. I found this epic by Keats. He said in Hyperion, "Fanatics have their dreams, wherewith they weave a paradise for a sect." And I went, wow, that was 1812 or whatever. And then this is exactly what happened. So
in 1968, yeah.
Yes, Convergence, 1968. And this starts with the epigraph from the also Keats, Jim Morrison. The West is the best. The West is the best. Get here. We'll do the rest. Scattered across the country, waylaid by potent micrograms combining with paperback Buddhism, they'd stumble through a portal, the oneness thing, that most burdensome moral code which, once touched, becomes brain flypaper, unshakable, a state akin to going mad. All cultural signposts pointing them here, San Francisco, anointed city of redemption where Snyder, Ginsberg, and the Beats had wrestled with Eastern ways and come out the other side as Dharma bumps. But the city, as they all do, demanded rent. Union jobs found down at the docks, where some became skinny arm-long shoremen by day so they could sit with teachers by night. Gurus, dancing Sufis, hash-huffing fakers, a few charlatans, of course, but they didn't care. They were too busy striving not to strive, too busy thinking hard about not thinking, while exhausted from throwing coffee bean sacks all day down on the waterfront, or worse, stacking fresh animal hides in the bottom holes of rust bucket freighters just in from Juneau. And they came in waves, each newly arrived cast looking up to those who had gotten themselves here earlier, those who had venerated the diggers, summer of love activists, some the same dropouts that Joan Didion had interviewed and disdained. And they sat in stiff rows at halls, ashrams, storefront temples, each copying the other's posture, back arch, severe chin tuck, deep exhalations, all striving to master right practice when beginner's mind was sufficient. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but that's just the taste of what was going on.
Yeah, it's so much like, and I don't mean it's imitative, but it's got that, the energy and the breadth and the scope of Howell. I've seen the best minds of my generation. I know. I'm sure it's impossible to erase from my syntax or from a lot of our syntax. But it's just embedded. We can't get rid of it. We just, when we start writing poetry, we enter a conversation that's been going on since Sappho, right?
Yes.
It's a conversation. And, you really hold up your end of the conversation. I don't know, Patty, can I ask him some questions about how these poems came into being?
And that's why you're my very special co-host.
Well, I just, you do this, Rupert. I've always been in awe of the way your poems cascade in a way that seems completely organic, as Whitman's poems, as Ginsberg's poem. They just kind of seem to roll out of you. But I don't know. Is it that easy? I mean, when you come up with metaphors like brain flypaper, which is wonderful. So what's actually, I have several questions, and I don't know which one to ask you first, but let me start here. This might be chronological. So the material for these poems, I don't know if you're somebody who kept a journal, who keeps a journal, but the details, there's such rich detail all the way through. That's what keeps us going. Did you draw this from memory, or were you writing at the time and had notebooks to draw from?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of it is storytelling. When you tell if you tell a story of something happened, like Kathy Will and I will say, "What happened today?" And if something's funny, then we'll repeat that story the next day. Then once you repeat a story twice, then it's in your memory. And and it's the same way with the farm. We get back together. We have an annual reunion, so we tell the old stories, and the stories become lore at a certain point. And plus, I do have a naturally good memory, but the details, they stick with you. And originally, I was trying to get away from the logorrhea of my, trying to not just talk and talk and talk so much. I went to this workshop with Tony Hoagland down in Palm Beach, and I thought he was going to help me with my long, because I want to be just like him. And he was adamant that, stop with that, try to compress. So then I got a fellowship, a residency at Hambidge. And so I went there for 2 weeks. It's up in North Georgia, Mary Hambidge Center for the Arts. And so I conceived of writing the whole story of the farm in sonnets.
Oh, wow.
Each person speaking in 14 lines. Just thought this would be a great thing. Hippies speaking in sonnets, But then, so I did that for 2 weeks, and I got a bunch of them. There's like 8 or so in this book, but that became just too limiting and too conceptual. So I went back and, just spiced those in there over time.
That's great. It works beautifully. So then I can ask my question about your process. Ginsberg famously said, first thought, best thought.
Yes.
And that you just kind of get into your groove and you write and you don't censor. And Ginsberg, I guess, would have us believe, or would have had us believe, that he never revised. That but if you were writing sonnets, I know you weren't just, it wasn't just spontaneous, right?
Right. It's like a wordle, times 10. It's just, if you make one, if you change one thing, it's a cascading effect. You have to tear everything up. So, I mean, I was trying to force myself into that. Cause I have a great respect for formality in poetry and what came before. I think we all have to have that to be poets, but that doesn't mean you have to adopt it. But you can just pay homage to what has gone before us. Yeah, I think that's important.
So, how long did it take you to write these poems?
I guess over the course of 10 or 12 years, just because I didn't want to, I was writing my other poems that had nothing to do with the farm, except they were all informed by the farm. There was always Eastern spirituality running through them, or the plight of the poor of the world. But still, I gradually began to assemble them. Then I realized the farm, it started out, there's 1,500, 2,000. It's hard to conceive how many people we know intimately on the farm, but it's got to be over 3,000 people that we know, not just know by their name, but just know them, or just went through some deep birthing with them, or digging some ditch with them. So we know these people. And now, we're all in our 70s, 60s, and 70s. And people are beginning to die. And it's just, I said, no, I mean, I can't. I've got to stop and do this farm. I've got to get this thing out because the train is leaving the station. The readership, the people who will understand this and get something from it. And just in the last, on the cover of the book, there's a truck, the Diamond T. I know this is a podcast, but there's 2 men on the back of the truck, and James and Dennis. They both died in the last 6 months. And James Cone from Brooklyn, New York. Just a big black, hairy Afro. I mean, he's not a black, but he's a Jewish, but that kind of black hair. He grew up in Brooklyn. I said, well, I'm going to need James's permission, because he's front and center on this. And then just in the last 6 weeks, he died. So, I mean, then it became a joke. Well, I don't have to get his permission anymore. It's like, that's another dark humor, right?
Now you can get his blessing.
Yeah, I think I really understand you wanting to, pay homage to that community and wanting them to be around to, share this with. But I think there's a great audience for this book. I think this is the kind of book of poetry that has hugely wide appeal, because of the subject matter and also because of the quality of the writing and the storytelling, So But I'm glad that you got a fire lit under your butt and got it written. And I'm glad to hear it took you 10 or 12 years.
Well, thanks to you and Patty, because I was really. It's hard to go in cold to a press with a project like this. You need some kind of entree, which thanks to you guys I got. And I think it's going to be. I think this book might be important. 60, 70 years from now, not as a great book, but just as a resource material for historians. It's just like first-person accounts, like the cuneiform.
Well,
here it is.
I think it will be. I think it will be important 50 or 60 years from now for that, and as a great book, and as a testament of what it's meant to be human. There's so much of being ceded to the digital world, but this was like these, and in these poems. Everyone in these poems, even the guy with the shotgun watching Gunsmoke, that you go to get the hay from. I mean,
Homer Sanders, yes.
Yeah, everyone is given human dimension. They're such wonderful characters. We don't think of books of poetry as having characters necessarily, but there are wonderful characters throughout. And not only the people, but the horses, the dogs. I mean,
I love the part that you mentioned. You got your horses and mules from the Amish community, and somewhere in there, I read that you made a very salient point. No one's getting rid of good livestock. I'm from New Jersey, suburban New York, and I now live on a farm. And the things I've learned a lot of times when I'm reading this book, it sounds like it's me, the Green Acres girl. It's like, what are you talking about? No one's giving up the good stuff. So I read it and it does make me giggle just thinking about the things you guys all learned. Whether you came from Brooklyn or San Francisco and now you're living on a farm, y'all learned a lot quick.
Yes, made a lot of mistakes, really stupid mistakes, laughable mistakes. And then just kind of something that can't be translated now. When I was this age and my parents and the older generation were just hating us for being against the war in Vietnam or being, trying to help Dr. King. Or I said, I will never criticize the younger generation when I, get their age. Okay, so now I am being tested, right? This is careful what you promise yourself, because it's just, and I know it's a cheating spirit in the generations of the 20s and 30s now. They just, it's just foreign. I mean, there's still a strain of hippies and ravers that are still out there, deadheads. But it's just, at the time, we thought, especially with SDS and the Southern Christian Leadership, we thought we were going to change. They thought this was the start of the wave, and now it's just a little bit gotten worse. I mean, a lot gotten worse. So anyway, so I'm just trying to,
I think that generation. I mean, I think you did change the world. But the problem is the world keeps changing. But that generation did change the world. Those activists did change the world. So I don't. It's just it keeps, the world keeps changing. And I only get despair with the younger generation when I have to tell them, when I have to remind them, you're young, you are supposed to rebel,
Yes.
Because I've seriously had young poets tell me, well, I want to be an established poet like you. I said, I never set out to be part of any establishment. And if you want to be part of the establishment, get a law degree. It's like, I just feel like young people are supposed to rebel against the established order. So I don't know, but there's just.
It's just there's a disconnect, and just I go in front of universities. I'll be looking out over, the professors are on the front row and the students are arrayed behind them. And I remember one time at Troy University in Alabama, I said, "So does anybody still have spiritual crises?" Okay, the professors all laugh. they busted out laughing. The students just stared at me, like, I can't have a spiritual crisis. What is a spiritual crisis? I said, no, you're in college, you're supposed to have a spiritual crisis.
Yeah. But, it's good to think about this in the context of what's happening now, that, what happened in the 60s was a lot of activism, a lot of change came because we were in a mass spiritual crisis, like we're in now.
Yeah,
It's like a collective spiritual crisis going on, and people were looking for ways to get through that, transform themselves. And so I think I'm a little bit of a Pollyanna maybe, but I think this book, reading it makes me laugh, it makes me cry, but it also fills me with hope, because it's about human beings and what human beings try to do. And, so we fail, and then we just try to fail better. So,
right.
It also makes me wonder what will be the new commune experience of the future if everything old is new again, going through our current spiritual crisis. The farm is still there. It's transformed. It's transformed. Yes. It's different. And I'm just kind of curious your take on it. You mentioned you go back annually. Have your were your daughters born there?
Yes, daughters were born there.
And have your grandkids gone? I'm just trying to get a picture of what your grandkids, for example, think about the farm.
No, the grandkids only know about it in passing. I've actually left when Alice and Lucy, they were, I guess, 7 and 5, or maybe 6 and 4. And so we had been there 10 years by that time. And they, to this day, they're glad that we left, because they're of that generation of, achievers, which is good. I mean, we achieved too. I'm not putting achieving down, but so the people that are on the farm now, it's a combination of those who were the originals. And then there's so many who have come, in the last 10, 20, 30 years and just made a whole new life for themselves and transformed the place into, it's a thriving community, really. But it's just not all things in common. And a word about all things in common, the title of the book that comes from the book of Acts. It's something Paul was talking about. We held, about the Christian community. So we would put that front and center to our Tennessean neighbors to impress upon them that actually, that we had some roots in Christianity, because we did. Jesus was a holy man, same as Buddha or whoever. At first, we were just trying to fit in. This is in the summer of, the late 70s. The Manson family had gone crazy, and the Weathermen, just Patty Hearst, all this stuff was going on. So we're trying to land in this rural community in the South, and they all know we're just trying not to get run out of the county, basically. That was job one. It's like a skin graft. We were just trying to not cause waves. And, so that's, I want to read the first couple of parts of Maggie May.
Oh, thank you.
Patty said she liked it, but it touches on a lot of things. Maggie May, for some of you who don't know, that's this Rod Stewart song that came out in 1971. Maggie May was playing nonstop on AM radio the summer we drove back roads looking to lease fields for our sorghum crop. Old beatnik syrup was going to be both a cash flow hope and a PR strategy. We would raise cane, cook molasses, turn a profit, and somehow come off as down home. We were budding capitalists living Marxist ideals, knocking on farmhouse doors in paisley patch jeans. And we must have seemed heaven sent, dusty angels waving a wad of 20s at hard scrabble locals. The radio in our 3/4-ton Ford set the top 40 Nashville and Huntsville. My finger, quick, hitting the next button each time I heard that mandolin intro to Rod Stewart's condescending kiss-off note to an older ex. I had to stop old Rod before he got to that most terrible line. I suppose I should collect my books and get on back to school. This seemed cruel and unusual, to have to re-examine life choices you had already made, and 4 or 5 times a day. What if this whole adventure were ill-advised? What if it hadn't been wise to sign that vow of poverty, declare voluntary peasant status with the IRS? What if I really should collect my books and get on back to school? Doubts like these were unwelcome, best kept to yourself. They would only bring you trouble, for we were on a mission. We were, as we often said, doing this thing. That was some of our lingo. We had all this internal lingo. We're doing this thing. That just meant, if somebody said, we're doing this thing, that just meant, don't argue.
Uh-huh.
No, you got, get in, push. Don't pull, So there are 2 things in here. So we did all sign a vow of poverty, which I just read that the new Pope had an argument with his superior when he was in Chicago in 1972, which was exactly the years we were on the farm. And so Pope Leo XIV had signed a vow of poverty in his youth to be in the Catholic monastery in Chicago. And one of the abbots, superior abbots, had said he couldn't get shoes. He couldn't get new shoes that had holes in them in a Chicago winter. And Provost, the Pope, he said, no, you don't understand. That's not the idea of the vow of poverty. It's not to live in abject poverty. So, and then the other one was the voluntary peasants. So
You really filed that status with the IRS?
yes, the Bruderhofs in Montana, and there were 2 sects during World War I who German Anabaptists way out in living communally out in Montana and Wyoming. They did not want to go to war. They did not want to pay taxes. And so they dealt with the IRS. And the IRS in around 1920 or early in that set up a designation that they could file as voluntary peasants. And that's carries on to this day where you can do that.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just Googling it right here. It is a thing. I had no idea. So I read about that. I didn't realize it was an IRS status as well, but that's kind of interesting.
Yes, we like in around 1980, after we'd come back to Georgia, our daughters opened up that letter you used to get from the IRS with your list of earnings, so you could, and from 1970 to 1979, I had zeros, goose eggs, because I had filed, but it was a zero. And they went, Dad.
Now I understand why it's necessary, because you have to show those goose eggs if you file that. And I
Yes.
just want you to be aware of what you're doing when you do it. There's another poem, which you don't have to read, but I for those who purchased the book, and we encourage you to go to our website, RedHawkPublications.com, and get the book by Rupert Fike, All Things in Common. The poem on page 68, On Top of Everything Else, it surely just kind of spells it out. If the first poem kind of has your open-eyed, naivete of what we're doing because it's the thing, and then by the time you get to On Top of Everything Else, you realize you're not happy. And that's okay, by the way. We expect a transformation. We want to see the emotions of what you're going through, and you capture it so well, Rupert. So again, for anybody who's really interested in poetry, you're going to find he's a marksman. He's top of his rank with poetry. And if you're interested in history in addition, or the Cultural Revolution, this book is a pleasant surprise, and you're going to learn something different. So again, I thank you. Richard Eller, the director of our program, he is a historian. He couldn't be here today, but he was thrilled. We both got goosebumps because we're a little younger, but we really like to learn about what it was like, the counterculture in the late 60s, early 70s. So you really gave us something to kind of grip into and really start reading about. So thank you.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you for believing in it. And thank you so much to Cecilia for pushing me, for giving me the oomph.
It's just a pleasure. It's kind of like one of those great thrills to say, I want to see this as a book. I love these poems and I want to see it as a book. And then to see it as a book, it's just a thrill. So thank you, Rupert. Thanks for writing these poems. Thanks for taking the 10 or 11 years, the lifetime it took you to produce this work, and for living the life that produced this work. I hope you'll be doing a bunch of readings around the country or on Zoom, like on my Zoom series.
Do you
Yes,
think
I'd love to.
will you be doing any readings like at the farm, Rupert?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I've done a few before, but way before this was a complete book. But yeah, it's possible.
Well, if you do, let us know so that we can let people know, because that could be fun and exciting for folks that might want to head out that way. That'd be cool.
Yeah, maybe you could live stream it, Rupert.
Yeah, I could live stream it. I mean,
Live stream it from the farm. Yeah.
The farm community right now is very diverse. It's there's some people who have a lot of regrets about being there. So it's not all la cheerleaders on the post farm. Some people regret having been there.
Wow.
Well, I want to thank you both. I do want to again make a shout out to our website that you can go to and find Rupert's book, as well as Bart Solarczyk's. And in fact, that will also be noted in our podcast description. And I also want to thank Cecilia. Thank you so much for being such a special help for me today. I appreciate it. Rupert, continued good luck with this publication. We keep getting, 5, 10, 15 orders every few days, and it's blowing us away. Yeah, seriously. We've got people ordering 5 and 6 copies of it from as far away as, Oregon, all the way to many from New York. All of a sudden, everyone from New York is ordering it. We've been getting a kick in learning geography by everyone who's been ordering this book. So thank you, Rupert. Thank you so much. And
I want to get some copies to people in Poland. I know I have some kind of new hippie type friends, trying to create something like the farm in Poland, and I need to get copies for them somehow. Not so easy to get books internationally, but we'll work on that.
We will work that out. I just sent a book of poetry one book of poems to someone in Warsaw recently. I wish I had known, because I would have sent it to him and said, "Yeah, Cecilia will be in touch with you." How funny is that?
Yeah.
But again, I do want to.
I think I'm going to start, since we're all having trouble with distribution. I think I'm going to start at like a new distribution that's called Suitcase Full of Books.
I think you're on something. I think you're on something. I feel bad. He bought a poetry collection that cost $12 and it cost $64 to ship it, and he paid for it. So I'm just saying, you're on to something.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to get books internationally. It's not easy unless you can. There are places where you can find like used bookshops where people who've been traveling through, drop books off and pick up another one. But it's they don't make it easy. Duty is really expensive. So,
yes.
But we'll get it. We'll get it. This book is wonderful, Rupert, and I know it's going to be a big success. I know it's going to speak to a lot of people, and I think this is just the right moment for it.
Yeah.
I think it's just the right moment.
Hopefully. Yes.
As we wrap this up, there's only one thing I have left for Rupert to do. And Rupert, would you mind repeating for me? RedPubPod?
RedPubPod. Oh, I screwed it up.
There you go. It's
RedPubPod.
You'll see what Richard does with it. And Cecilia, would you mind saying RedPubPod?
RedPubPod.
There you go. That's it. We have fun getting people to say it's a bit of a tongue twister, but thank you both. We're going to wrap this up. Please, again, make sure you go to our website to get Rupert's book. It's in the book description. Follow us, like us, and share us, and visit Tasteful Beans, our lovely sponsor for our podcast, RedPubPod. Thank you very much, folks, and look forward to you the next time.
Bye.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.
This is
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod,
RedPubPod.
a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Redhawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
I screwed it up. There you go. It's
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.